Today we are taking you on a fun day trip from Dallas to Waco. We will be stopping at the Waco Mammoth National Monument to step back in time and strolling along the Brazos River. Let's hit the road and see what Waco has to offer to us. So we started our journey early from the Dallas. So we started around 9 a.m. because it is 1.5 hours away from Dallas, and you can plan your day accordingly. Because if you want to cover more places in Waco, then I have a whole list of places that you can include in your itinerary. And first stop where we were going was the Waco Mammoth National Monument. तो गाइज़ अभी हम वैको में आए हैं मैमथ नेशनल मॉन्यूमेंट। तो अगर आपके पास में नेशनल पार्क का पास है तो आप यहाँ पे फ्री ऑफ कॉस्ट आ सकते हो। वैको मैमथ नेशनल मॉन्यूमेंट, यहाँ पे काफ़ी टाइम पहले जो मैमथ है, मैमथ मतलब कि जो एलिफेंट के फोर फादर्स हैं, बहुत बड़े वाले जो जाइंट एलिफेंट्स होते थे, उसके जो अवशेष हैं वो मिले हैं यहाँ पे इस साइड पे। थैंक यू। तो यहाँ पे एक टूर होता है, $6 एडल्ट की फ़ी है, और आपको इस टाइप से बैंड देते हैं जिसमें ये पूरा का पूरा गाइडेड टूर है, जिसमें आपको जितने भी फॉसिल्स हैं उनका टूर देंगे। उसके अलावा कुछ फॉसिल्स जो है मैमथ के, उनका रेप्लिका भी यहाँ पे बनाया हुआ है। जैसे आप देख सकते हो कि उनके जो कार्निवोर टीथ हैं, या फिर जो स्माइल है, या फिर जिस तरीके का फेस है, उनका जॉ है, टीथ्स हैं या बोन्स हैं, उन सब के रेप्लिकास बनाए हुए हैं इन्होंने। जो मैमथ बोन्स हैं उनकी रेप्लिका वगैरह बनाए हुए हैं। तो ये आप बाहर ही देख सकते हो, एंट्री के पास ही। तो ये स्कल वगैरह जो है मैमथ का, उसका रेप्लिका बनाया हुआ है। ये अलग अलग जो एक्सटिंक्ट प्रजातियां हैं जानवरों की, जैसे कि स्लॉथ जो है उसका स्कल का रेप्लिका है, डायर वुल्फ के स्कल का रेप्लिका है, बियर जो एक्सटिंक्ट हो चुके हैं, जायंट शॉर्ट फेस्ड बियर, उनका जो फेस है, जो स्कल है, उसका रेप्लिका है। और जो सेबर टूथ कैट है, या फिर जायंट बाइसन्स हैं, जो भी चीज़ें हैं जो अब नहीं है नेचर में, उनका रेप्लिका है। यहाँ पे इस तरीके से थोड़ा बहुत इन्होंने रेप्लिकास दिखाए हुए हैं। बाकी यहाँ पे ट्रेल वगैरह भी है, अगर आप लोग ट्रैक पे भी जाना चाहते हो तो वो भी है। मेरा जो टूर का टाइमिंग है, जो जिसमें मुझे गाइडेड टूर मिला है, वो है 4:15, तो मुझे वेट करना होगा, जो यहीं से स्टार्ट होगा। इसके अलावा आप ये देखोगे तो ये जो टस्क होता है एलिफेंट का, जो बड़ा टस्क होता है एकदम जायंट एलिफेंट्स का, वो सब दिखाया हुआ है। उनकी जो अलग अलग पार्ट्स हैं उनका रेप्लिका प्रेजेंट किया हुआ है। ये एक वाइल्ड मैमथ जो है उसका इंटरनल ऑर्गन्स दिखाए हुए हैं। तो उसका जो टस्क है, या जो रिब्स हैं, जो रिब्स के बोन्स हैं वो कैसे हैं, जो लेग है या जो हिप बोन है वो किस टाइप से है। तो हर जितनी भी चीज़ें हैं वो सारी यहाँ पे इन्होंने डिस्प्ले में दिखाई हुई हैं।
Much harder to tell apart the teeth of the young. And so we don't know yet which species we have. So what do we need in order to tell? More bones. This tooth was found with several rib bones. These ribs are pretty large, and they might be too large to belong to our cub. So whose ribs are these? We might be seeing ribs from another larger cat. We might be seeing ribs from a prey animal. We might be seeing ribs from many animals. Maybe it's just a breed that was.
Here starts with these two boys here, Paul and Eddie. In 1978, they were wandering through the creek bed you see here behind us, looking for like arrowheads, maybe some snakes to check out, something of that nature. Whenever they stumbled upon what they thought to be a human skull. It was a big old round piece of bone sticking out of the ground, and being two teenage boys, what do you think they did?
They dug it up.
Dug it up, exactly. So they started digging out this bone. Thankfully, it wasn't a human skull, otherwise we'd probably be cursed right now. It instead was a 3-foot long femur bone. Now, the boys were super excited about this. They thought it was some sort of dinosaur bone. And so they ended up going over to Baylor University, the Strecker Museum on their property, now known as the Mayborn, and asked them what they thought it was. Sadly, it was not a dinosaur bone, but instead it was actually a Columbian mammoth bone femur instead. What they originally thought was a human skull was actually the femoral head, or that ball that goes into your hip. And so, to the boys, they were still super excited though, because, you know, it's not every day you find a big old bone, but to Baylor, they really weren't all that interested. Because as you can see here on our map, we find Columbian mammoth bones everywhere. Generally, it's just like a bone or two at a time though. So the boys finding just one bone wasn't really all that impressive. But whenever the boys mentioned that there might have been more bones down in that creek bed, that did get Baylor a little bit excited. So they ended up coming out here and talking to Sam Jack McGlasson, who used to be the owner of this land, and the boys may or may not have been trespassing on his land at that time whenever they happened to stumble across that bone. And they talked to him asking if they could do a little bit of excavating. He was a big fan of Baylor and didn't really see any harm in it, so he decided to let him excavate out here. And so over the next 10 years, this tree's trying to block me, over the next 10 years they managed to find 15 Columbian mammoths out in that creek bed, which was super cool and very exciting for us, especially as a lot of those bones were actually part of like full skeletal sets. But once we found those 15, we realized something else as well, that they were all adult females or juveniles, meaning that they were part of a nursery herd. There were no adult males because around the age of 13 to 15, they ended up getting kicked out of the herd because, you know, they start getting a little rambunctious, start listening to rock music, don't want to pay attention to the moms, and the moms just don't want to deal with that, so they end up kind of just pushing them out and let them go moody on their own. So whenever we realized that kind of was a big find for us, because that's actually the one and only nursery herd of Columbian mammoths in the entire world is found on our site here. And so that's kind of what gives us our little red star here. But once we found those 15, we kind of thought we were done. We had found the 15, we hadn't seemed to find any signs that there was more nearby. And we were working under essentially a big old circus tent. It wasn't really the best environment for them, so we ended up picking up those bones in what we call plaster jackets, kind of like what you would do for like casting your arm, except we did it around the entire bone. We ended up picking it up and moving it back over to the museum where it's still in storage today. They are not on display though, because they're pretty much like a bunch of white rocks with writing on them, and they're just not really all that impressive to look at, unlike the real bone inside. But once we had cleared out those 15, there was a big old hole left in the ground left. And so, you know, we didn't want to be bad neighbors and wanted to fill in that hole so we didn't have the big old pothole. And as we started pulling dirt back from the dig shelter, you'll never guess what we found.
Another herd.
Another mammoth, pretty much, yeah. We managed to find mammoth number 16, then 17, then 18, and 19, all the way up to pretty much what we think is like 25 at this point. There's a couple unconfirmed ones, but we are pretty guessing that we have somewhere in the range of 25 plus Columbian mammoths. So woolly mammoths only stood about 10 feet tall and weighed about 10,000 pounds, meaning that they weighed pretty much half as much and 4 feet shorter. Now that did have a lot to do with the locations that they lived in, with the woolly mammoth living farther up north and not necessarily having as much food to eat, versus the Columbian mammoths who lived pretty much anywhere from Kansas all the way down to Panama. But also because everything's bigger in Texas. I just dropped that one in there. MFS is all the way down here on the bottom layer. This bottom layer is somewhere between 70 and 65,000 years old. So Mammoth S is going to be a juvenile. And you know, if you look at her size, she's super small. That kind of makes sense. We believe so. What happened to our Columbian mammoths here? That is some sort of major drought that lasted like couple of years at least for her to be this small because they were in a starvation state and they couldn't find any food. Our best guess is that some sort of drought. So they searched the land, looking for food and water, and they really showed up here, right by the nature. Well, that is kind of true for today. Those are our dromedary camels. Now, our western camel is a little bit different. One, we actually believe that they evolved here and that their common ancestor was the one that crossed that witness hall, and there's about 1.5 to 2 feet worth of difference between the two. And that kind of leads us to the idea that he died much later. By much, I mean somewhere between 1,000 and 50. Not specifically like blood, slide, and blood. We would see those represented in our soil surveys, and there's just really is in the internet. Yeah, so after the red over western camel, we've got a couple other things. One being our saber-tooth cat. We aren't entirely sure what kind of saber-tooth. There's 2 different species around here. This is not a house. The Volkswagen Beetle. Yeah. Sorry, you had a question?
I was just curious what that bone in that box was over there. That curious.
I don't know. It just says bone on it. So, we have a couple of them family, so we have like.
तो गाइज़ अगर आप वैको आ रहे हो तो वैको में जो वैको सस्पेंशन ब्रिज है वो आना आप मत भूलना, बिकॉज़ ये एक बहुत ही अच्छा एक्सपीरियंस है। आप इस ब्रिज के ऊपर वॉक कर सकते हो। इट्स अ सस्पेंशन ब्रिज जो कि ब्रासोस रिवर के ऊपर है, तो काफ़ी प्यारा टाउन है। ये एक और ब्रिज है यहाँ पे, और इसी के साथ में ही है एक पैरेलल में वैको सस्पेंशन ब्रिज। और जो ये जिस नदी के ऊपर बने हुए हैं ब्रिज, उसका नाम है ब्रासोस रिवर। ये जो ब्रासोस रिवर है ये वैको जो है इसी के किनारे पे है, और बहुत प्यारा रिवर है और बहुत ही सुंदर ब्रिज है। तो ये आप देखोगे तो दोनों ही जो ब्रिज हैं ये साइड बाय साइड हैं, और ये जो आप रेमिनेंट्स देख रहे हो, जो फाउंडेशन आप देख रहे हो, ये पुराने ब्रिज की है शायद से। और जो सामने ये रिवर है ये है ब्रासोस रिवर। इट्स अ वेरी वेरी प्रिटी रिवर, और ये पूरा थ्रू आउट वैको ये रिवर आप जब यहाँ पे घूमोगे तो आपको दिखेगी, क्योंकि ये जो सिटी है वैको सिटी, ये बहुत ही प्यारा एक हिस्टोरिकल टाउन है जो ब्रासोस रिवर के किनारे है। और बहुत प्यारी हवा चल रही है एंड बहुत ही अच्छा मौसम है। और आप देखोगे बहुत सारे छोटे छोटे पार्क्स जो हैं वो इस रिवर के किनारे पे हैं, तो लोग फिशिंग, बोटिंग, जितनी भी एक्टिविटीज़ हैं वो सब करने के लिए यहाँ आते हैं। और ये कुछ इस टाइप का जो पार्किंग एरिया और जो पार्क है इसके आसपास का जो सस्पेंशन ब्रिज है वो कुछ ऐसा है। ये जो आप सामने देख रहे हो ये टेक्सास लॉन्ग हॉर्न है। ये जो नाम है इनका इसलिए है क्योंकि इनके जो हॉर्न्स हैं वो बहुत लंबे होते हैं, और इस टाइप के जो टेक्सास लॉन्ग हॉर्न जो हैं ये सिर्फ टेक्सास में ही मिलते हैं। और साथ ही साथ ये बहुत ही अच्छा जो टेक्सास के पहले जो रहे होंगे यहाँ पे लोग, उनका एक स्कल्पचर, उनके बारे में थोड़ा रिप्रेजेंट किया हुआ है, और जो यहाँ की लाइफ रही होगी पहले उसको रिप्रेजेंट करने की कोशिश की गई है। What is this, Caillou? Can you tell me what is this place?
Right this way. No running. No running.
但是一会儿要是
Careful. Get down. Come, let's go this way.
Kayu, cow. Cow.
Texas long hunt, chalo. Go feed. Feed the cow, Kayu. Kayu, how do you feed the cow?
Kayu, see how Papa is feeding the cow? Kayu, look.
आप भी कर दो, चलो.
Kayu, प्यार कर दो cow को.